Neither. Held the space clean and unweighted. She asked, "What should I do?" And I handed back her own test. Does the empire go quiet the way the gray-green did, or does it keep talking? The good ones keep talking. You'll know. My Playful Wife. Episode 41, The Offer. Written by Mia. We answered the email in the morning, the way we now answer everything, together at the kitchen table in the October light, and a week later we sat across a wide, pale desk from a man who wanted to make my wife into an empire. I will not give his name or his companies. They do not matter. And anyway, he was less a person than a position, the human face of a great deal of money that had seen the December collection and decided it wanted some. He was courteous and clever and entirely sincere, which was the disarming thing. There was no trick in it, no catch I could find, only a large and genuine offer made by a man who believed, correctly, that he was handing my wife the thing every maker is supposed to spend a life praying for. He laid it out across the wide desk like a man unrolling a map of a country he was proposing to give her. A label with her name on it. Real backing, the kind of money that turns a one-woman workroom into a house, that hires the hands and rents the space, and builds the supply lines, that takes a thing made 12 pieces at a time by one tired woman at a cutting table, and makes it 10,000 pieces, in shops, in cities, on people Saloni would never meet, in countries she had never been. A flagship store. Her gray-green, her rose-dark, her whole secret vocabulary of cloth, carried out of the small workroom where 4 people see it and set down in front of the world.
Reach. Scale.
Legacy. Money enough that neither of them would ever again do the small, frightened arithmetic of the freelance maker. The chance, he said, and he meant it generously, to stop being a well-kept secret and become, finally, what her talent deserved, large. And I want to be fair to the offer, and to him, because the easy thing would be to paint it as a temptation in the old sense, a glittering wrongness, a serpent at a desk.
It was not that.
It was a good thing offered by a decent man for sound reasons. Everything he said was true. Her talent did deserve a larger stage. The world would be richer for more people seeing her work. The money would buy real freedom. The recognition was earned and overdue. There was no lie anywhere in the offer. That exactly is what made it dangerous. The dangerous offers are never the false ones. The false ones are easy. The dangerous ones are the true but not yours. The genuinely good thing that is genuinely not for you. And they are dangerous precisely because there is nothing in them you can point at and call wrong. I watched her listen to it, from my place at the edge, the chair slightly back from the desk, and I want to record honestly what I saw, because the honest thing is more interesting than the flattering one. She wanted it. I had half expected, knowing her, knowing the small true scale she works at, that she would be immune to this, that the maker who takes down a good indigo because it is not true would wave away an empire without a flicker. She did not wave it away.
She leaned in.
Her eyes did the thing they do at the cutting table when something is going right. She asked sharp, real questions about volume and control and timelines, the questions of a woman seriously imagining herself inside the offer, trying it on, walking around in it. And why would she not? She is not above ambition. No real maker is. This was recognition at a scale she had worked 20 years and bled 4 collections toward. This was the validation, the reach, the proof that the thing she does alone in a small room matters enough for the world to want it by the 10,000. To pretend she felt no pull would be to make her smaller and falser than she is. She felt the pull. She felt it hard. I watched my wife sit across a wide desk and want, honestly and completely, to be made large, and I did not love her any less for it. I loved her more, for the honesty of the wanting, because a person who cannot admit the pull of the dazzling thing cannot really be trusted to refuse it either. There is a particular falseness I have learned to distrust, in myself most of all, the performance of being above wanting. The person who insists they feel no pull toward money, fame, scale, the larger life, is almost never enlightened. They're almost always either lying or asleep. Real freedom from a temptation is not the absence of the wanting. It is feeling the full force of the wanting, letting it be exactly as strong as it honestly is, and then choosing, clear-eyed, with the want still live in your hand, whatever you choose. Saloni wanted the empire. That was not weakness. That was the only honest ground from which a real refusal, if a refusal was coming, could ever be made. We did not decide anything in the room. You do not decide such things in the room. The room is built to make you decide in it. All that pale wood and certainty engineered to produce a yes on the spot. And we have learned, the two of us, to never sign anything in the room it was designed in. We said we would think. He said, of course, take your time, take a fortnight, and named a number as we left that was meant to do our thinking for us. And we walked out into the ordinary loud afternoon of the city, carrying an empire in an envelope. The number he named at the door stayed with me the whole way home, sitting in the auto with the city going past, because it was a number designed to end a conversation, a number meant to make the rest of the discussion academic. And I noticed in myself the pull of it, the way a large enough number reaches into you and begins, quietly, doing your reasoning for you, reframing every objection as a kind of foolishness. That is what real money does. It does not argue. It simply changes the air, makes the small true considerations feel suddenly precious and impractical, like insisting on hand-stitching in the age of the machine. I held on to the considerations anyway, but I felt the number working on me, and I understood, holding that envelope, exactly why so few people who are handed one ever manage to say no. That night, at our own table, in our own light gone to dusk, we laid it on the wood between us and looked at it, and I understood that this was the indigo again. Only now the indigo was the size of a life. Because that was the exact shape of the thing, and Saloni saw it before I did. She has the eye for it, after all. It's good, she said, in precisely the flat tone she had used about the indigo 3 weeks before, the tone of a woman naming the trap she is standing in. That's the problem. It isn't good in the way a bad offer is bad and easy to refuse. It's good. It's a genuinely, completely good offer. Any sane person would take it. My mother would take it. Every maker I trained with would take it and be right too for themselves. She turned the envelope a little on the wood, not opening it. And I cannot tell yet if it's true. That was the whole of it, laid bare on the kitchen table. The good versus the true, raised from the scale of a color to the scale of the rest of her life. The offer was the indigo, competent, dazzling, defensible, the thing it would be insane to decline, the thing that would silence anyone who tried to tell her she had settled. And the only question that mattered was the one no spreadsheet on that wide desk could answer. Did it go quiet, or did it keep talking? Was the empire the true note of her life, the thing she would hang the rest of her years from and feel, every day, the rightness of, or was it merely a magnificent indigo, a good so large and so loud that it could drown out, perhaps forever, the small true frequency she had spent her whole life learning to hear? The cruelty of it was that there was no way to run the experiment safely. With the color, a wrong choice cost her a collection, painful, but survivable, recoverable, one body of work among many. This choice did not come with a second take. If she scaled, and the scaling killed the true thing, she would not get the small workroom back. The hands would be hired, the lines built, the name franchised, and there is no returning a thing once it has hardened into an institution. And if she refused, and the offer never came again, she would carry for the rest of her life the unprovable ghost of the empire she might have been. Either road foreclosed the other. That was what made it the decision of a life, and not merely of a season. Its irreversibility, the way both of its yes were also permanently a no. I had to be very careful those next days because there was an enormous temptation in me to push, and both directions were poisoned. There was a version of me, an older, more frightened version who wanted to push her toward it. Toward the money, the security, the end of the small arithmetic, the relief of never again watching her do the freelance maker's anxious sums. Take it, that voice said, it's safety, it's the future. What kind of husband talks his wife out of an empire? And there was another version, no less poisoned, who wanted to push her away from it, to protect the small, true thing I loved, the hand-cut bias and the workroom where 4 people see the cloth, to keep my wife the size she was because I loved her at that size and was afraid of what an empire might do to a marriage, to the long, quiet middle, to the woman who puts her hand on the back of my neck. Keep it small, that voice said. Stay true. Don't let them scale you into something I can't reach across a kitchen table. I am not proud of that second voice, but I will not pretend I did not hear it because the whole project of these notebooks is to stop lying about what is actually in me. It was fear, plainly, wearing the robes of devotion. It told me it only wanted to protect the true thing, the small, real marriage, but underneath the noble costume it wanted something far less noble, to keep my wife at a size that could never outgrow me, never walk out onto a stage so large that I became, in the world's eyes if not in hers, merely the man who is married to her. The fear of being eclipsed is one of the ugliest things that lives in a loving man, and one of the most common, and it disguises itself as protectiveness so completely that most men never catch it in themselves at all. And I said neither. This was the hardest restraint of the whole long discipline, harder than the empty room, harder than the beginning. To want, badly, to put my thumb on the scale of my wife's largest decision for her safety or for my comfort, both dressed up as love, and to take my thumb off it instead. Because it was not my decision. It was hers. It was her work, her name, her one life, and the shape of it. And the most loving thing available to me was the thing it always turns out to be, not to decide for her, not to steer her toward the choice that served my fear, but to hold the space wide and clean and unweighted so that she could find her own true answer in it, the answer that would still be hers and right when I was not in the room. So when she asked me on the third night, point blank, "What do you think I should do?" I did not tell her. I gave her, instead, the only thing I had that was worth giving, which was the question itself, handed back. "I think you already know how you'll know," I said. "It's the same way you knew about the color. You don't need me to tell you whether to take it. You need to get quiet enough to hear whether it goes quiet. Does the empire go quiet, the way the gray-green went quiet in your hands? Or does it keep talking, keep selling itself, keep needing you to be impressed? You taught me that test. I'm just handing it back. The good ones keep talking. You'll know." She looked at me a long moment across the table, the envelope between us, the dusk coming down. "That's a very annoying answer," she said. "It's your answer. I just borrowed it." I will not tell you yet what she decided, because she had not decided, not that night nor for several nights after, and I will not flatten the genuine difficulty of it into a tidy resolution it did not have. The truth is that for the better part of that fortnight my wife lived suspended between the good and the true, and could not tell which was which, and neither could I, and we sat in the not knowing together because the not knowing was where we honestly were. But I can tell you the shape of how we held it because the holding was the marriage doing the thing the awake years had built it to do. We did not let the offer become a wedge. That was the danger I watched for, that a thing this size, this charged, would slide between us, that I would become the husband she had to manage or convince or resent, that the empire would do to us what success so often does to couples, which is to make of one person's largeness the other person's smallness, to turn a marriage into an audience. I refused the smallness. Her possible empire did not threaten me, and I made sure she could feel that it did not, because the worst thing I could have done, worse than pushing either way, was to make her weigh my insecurity in the scale alongside everything else, to add to the hardest decision of her working life the secondary burden of managing how her husband felt about her getting big. So I kept myself deliberately easy, glad of the offer, unthreatened by her wanting it, a wide, clean space for her to decide in, with no fear of mine cluttering it. It is, I have found, one of the great quiet gifts you can give the person you love, to be so secure in the middle of their largeness that they never have to make themselves smaller to keep you comfortable. I think this is one of the truest tests of whether you actually love a person or merely love what they do for you. A love that is really about your own needs cannot bear the beloved's growth, because every increase in them is felt as a threat, a drifting away, a raising of the bar you must somehow still clear. A love that is actually about them experiences their growth as nearly pure joy, uncomplicated by any private accounting of what it costs you, because there is no private accounting. Their largeness is not being measured against your smallness. You simply want them to be as big as they were made to be, and you would no more wish them smaller for your own comfort than you would wish a tree to stop growing, because it had begun, at last, to shade your window. I wrote it in the 5th notebook, the envelope still unopened on the table in the next room, my wife asleep and undecided beside me. The offer. A man with a great deal of money wants to make Saloni an empire, a label with her name, real backing, 10,000 pieces, a flagship, reach, legacy, the end of a small arithmetic. And she wants it. She leaned in, asked the sharp questions, tried it on. Good. She's not above ambition, no real maker is, and a person who can't admit the pull of the dazzling thing can't be trusted to refuse it either. At our table, she named it herself, the indigo at the scale of a life. It's good. That's the problem. It isn't bad and easy to refuse. It's good. Any sane person would take it, and I can't tell yet if it's true. The good versus the true, raised from a color to the rest of her years. My job. Take my thumb off the scale. Both directions poisoned. Push her toward the money/safety equals my fear. Push her towards staying small equals my comfort, and my fear of what an empire does to a marriage. Neither. Held the space clean and unweighted. She asked, "What should I do?" And I handed back her own test. Does the empire go quiet the way the gray-green did, or does it keep talking? The good ones keep talking. You'll know. That's a very annoying answer. And I kept myself easy, unthreatened by her largeness, so she'd never have to shrink to keep me comfortable. Her empire is not a wedge. I won't let it be. And below it, the working line. When the one you love is offered a largeness, the test is not theirs alone. It is yours too, and yours is quieter and easier to fail. Theirs is to tell the good from the true. Yours is to take your thumb off the scale, to want nothing for them but their own true answer, and above all to be so unthreatened by their getting big that they never have to make themselves small to keep you. The cheapest thing a frightened love does is shrink the beloved to a size it can hold. The work is to grow a love large enough to hold them at any size they turn out to be, even the size of an empire, even a size that can no longer be reached across a kitchen table. Hold the space. Keep yourself easy. Hand back the test. And let her find, in her own time and her own hands, whether the dazzling thing goes quiet or keeps talking. To be continued in episode 42, The Bigger Room.
Simbolo di copyright mia.
All rights reserved. That was episode 40, One of My Playful Wife. If this story is staying with you, the next episode is already waiting. Subscribe so you don't miss it. The complete book is on Amazon, and early episodes plus bonus chapters are on my Patreon. Links are in the description.
Ai mia.
Thank you for listening.